Chapter 3, Part II. Of the Life and Letters of Elizabeth Prentiss, by George Prentiss. This recording is in the public domain. Teresa Downey. In November of this year, at the urgent solicitation of Mr. Persico, Miss Payson returned to Richmond and again became a teacher in his school. But everything was now changed, and that for the worse. Mr. Persico, no longer under the influence of his wife, who had fallen a prey to cruel disease, lost heart, fell heavily in debt, and became at length hopelessly insolvent. Later he is said to have been lost at sea on his way to Italy. The whole period of Miss Payson's second residence in Richmond was one of sharp trial and disappointment, but it brought out in a very vivid manner her disinterestedness and the generous warmth of her sympathies. At the peril of her health, she remained far into the summer of 1843, faithfully performing her duties, although, as she well knew, it was doubtful if she would receive any compensation for her services. As a matter of fact, only a pittance of her salary was ever paid. Of this second residence in Richmond, no other record is needed than a few extracts from letters written to a beloved friend who was passing the winter at the South, and whose name has already been mentioned. A sentence in the first of these letters deserves to be noted as affording a key to one side of her character, namely, the depressing sense of inferiority which was born with me. All her earlier years were shadowed by this morbid feeling, nor was she ever quite free of its influence. It was, probably, at once a cause and an effect of the sensitive shyness that clung to her to the last. Perhaps, too, it grew in part out of her irrepressible craving for love, coupled with utter incredulity about herself possessing the qualities which rendered her so lovable. "It is one of the faults of my character," she wrote, "to fancy that nobody cares for me." When, dear Anna, I had taken my last look at the last familiar face in Portland, I fancy you know whose face it was, I became quite as melancholy as I ever desire to be, even on the principle that by the sadness of the countenance of the heart is made better. I dare say you never had a chance to feel, and therefore will not be able to understand, the depressing sense of inferiority which was born with me, which grew with my growth and strengthened with my strength, and which, though somewhat repressed of late years, gets the mastery very frequently, and makes me believe myself the most unlovable of beings. It was with this feeling that I left home and journeyed hither, wondering why I was made, and if anybody on earth will ever be a bit the happier for it, and whether I shall ever learn where to put myself in the scale of being. This is not humility, please take notice, for humility is contented, I think, with such things as it hath. To Miss Anna S. Prentiss, Richmond, November 26, 1842. When I reached Richmond last night, tired and dusty and stupefied, I felt a good deal like crawling away into some cranny and staying there the rest of my life. But this morning, when I had remembered mother's existence, and yours, and that of one or two others, I felt more disposed to write than anything else. Your note was a great comfort to me during 2½ hours at Portsmouth, and while on my journey. I thought pages to you in reply. How I should love to have you here in Richmond, even if I could only see you once a month, or know only that you were here, and never see you. With many most kind friends about me, I still shall feel very keenly the separation from you. There is nobody here to whom I can speak confidingly, and my hidden spirit will have to sit with folded wings for 8 months to come. To whom shall I talk about you, pray? On the way hither I fell in love with a little girl who also fell in love with me, and as I sat with her over our lonely fire at Philadelphia and in Washington, I could not help speaking of you now and then, till at last she suddenly looked up and asked me if you hadn't a brother, which question effectually shut my mouth. In a religious point of view I am sadly off here. There is a different atmosphere in the house from what there used to be, and I look forward with some anxiety to the future. The little girl referred to received soon after a letter from Miss Payson. In enclosing it to a friend more than 37 years later, she wrote, "I cried bitterly when she left us for Richmond. She was out and out good and true. When my father was taking leave of us, the last night in Washington, she proposed that as we had enjoyed so much together, we should not separate without a prayer of thanks and blessing seeking, a proposal to which my father most heartily responded." Here is an extract from the letter: "When I look over my schoolroom I am frequently reminded of you, for my 36 pupils are, most of them, about your age. I have some very lovable girls under my wing. I should be too happy if there were no unruly members among these good and gentle ones. But in the little world where I shall spend the greater part of the next 8 months, as well as in the great and busy one, which as yet neither you or I know much about, I fancy there are mixtures of the just and the unjust, of the evil and the good. We have a very pleasant family this year. The youngest, for I omit the black baby in the kitchen, we call Lily. She is my pet and plaything, and is quite as affectionate as you are. Then comes a damsel named Beatrice, who has taken me upon trust, just as you did. You may be thankful that your parents are not like hers, for she is to be educated for the world. Music, French and Italian crowd almost everything else out of place, and as for religious influences, she is under them here for the first time. How thankful I feel, when I see such cases as this, that God gave me pious parents, who taught me from my very birth that His fear is the beginning of wisdom. My room mate we call Kate. She is pious, intelligent, and very warm hearted, and I love her dearly. She is an orphan, Mrs. Persico's daughter. I am rather affectionate by nature, if not in practice, and though I know that nearness to the friend whom I hope I have chosen could make me happy in any circumstances, I do not pretend to be above the desire for earthly friends, provided He sees fit to give them to me. I believe my father used to say that we could not love them too much if we only gave Him the first place in our hearts. Let us earnestly seek to make Him our all in all. It is delightful in the midst of adversities and trials to be able to say, "There is none upon earth that I desire besides Thee." But it requires more grace, I think, to be able to use such language when the world is bright about us. You have known little of sorrow as yet, but if you have given your whole undivided heart to God, you will not need affliction, or to have your life made so desolate that weariness must toss you to His breast. There is a bright side to religion, and I love to see Christians walking in the sunshine. I trust you have found this out for yourself, and that your hope in Christ makes you happy in the life that now is, as well as gives you promise of blessedness in that which is to come. Before she had been long in Richmond, she was seized with an illness which caused her many painful, wearisome days and nights. Referring to this illness in a letter to Miss Prentiss, she writes: "It is dull music being sick away from one's mother, but I have a knack at submitting myself to my fate, so my spirit was a contented one, and I was not for a moment unhappy, except for the trouble which I gave those who had to nurse me. I thought of you at least 2/3 of the time. As my little pet, Lily L., said to me last night, when she had very nearly squeezed the breath out of my body, 'I love you a great deal harder than I hug you.' So I say to you, I love you harder than I tell, or can tell you. A happy New Year to you, dear Anna. How much and how little in those few old words. Consider yourself kissed, and good night." The New Year was destined to be a very eventful one alike to her friend and to herself. She seemed to have a presentiment of it, at least in her own case, as some lines written on a blank leaf of her almanac for that year attest: "With mingling hope and trust and fear, I bid thee welcome, untried year. The paths before me pause to view, which shall I shun and which pursue? I read my fate with serious eye, I see dear hopes and treasures fly. Behold thee on thy opening wing, now grief, now joy, now sorrow bring. God grant me grace my course to run, with one blessed prayer, His will be done." A little journal kept by her during the following months gives bright glimpses of her daily life. The entries are very brief, but they show that while devoted to the school she also spent a good deal of time among her books, kept up a lively correspondence with absent friends, and contributed her full share to the entertainment of the household by holding soirees in her room, reading to the girls, writing stories for them, and helping to "play goose" in other games. To Miss Anna S. Prentiss, Richmond, February 22, 1843. Thanks to the Father of His country for choosing to be born in Virginia, for it gives us a holiday, and I can write to you, dearest of Annas. You don't know how delighted I was to get your long watched for letter. You very kindly expressed the wish that you could bear some of my school drudgery with me. I would not give you that, but you should have love from some of these warm hearted damsels, which would make you happy even in the midst of toil and vexation. I can't think what makes my scholars love me so. I am sure it is a gift for which I should be grateful, as coming from the same source with all other blessings which are about me. I believe my way of governing is a more fatiguing one than that of scolding, fretting, and punishing. There is a little bit of a tie between each of these hearts and mine, and the least mistake on my part severs it forever, so I have to be exceedingly careful what I do and say. This keeps me in a constant state of excitement, and makes my pulse fly rather faster than, as a pulse arrived at years of discretion, it ought to do. I came out of school so happy, though half tired to death, wishing I were better, and hoping I shall become so, for the more my scholars love me, the more I am ashamed that I am not the pink of perfection they seem to fancy me. Evening. I have just come up here to my lonely room, which, if I hadn't the happiest kind of heart in the world, would look right gloomy, and have read for the third time your dear good letter. And all I wish is that I could tell you how I love you, and how angry I am with myself that I did not know and love you sooner. It seems so odd that we should have been born and raised so near each other and yet apart. You say you are a believer in destiny. So am I, particularly in the affairs of the heart. And I hope that we are made friends now for something more than the satisfaction which we find in loving. I am in danger of forgetting that I am to stay in this world only a little while, and then go home. Will you help me bear it in mind? How must the "Pilgrim's Progress" interest a mind that has never learned the whole book by rote in childhood? I have often wished I could read it as a first told tale, and so I wish about the 14th chapter of John, and some other chapters in the Bible. Your incidental mention that you have family prayers every evening produced 1,000 strange sensations in my mind. I hardly know why. Did I ever tell you how I love and admire the new Bishop Johns, and how if I am a "good Presbyterian," as they say here, I go to hear him whenever and wherever he preaches? I don't think him a great man, but he has that sincerity and truthfulness of manner which win your love at once. What a nice time you must have had studying German! I dreamed the night I read your account of it that I was with you, and that you said I was as stupid as an owl. I have the queerest mind somehow. It won't work like those of other people, but goes the furthest way round when it wants to go home, and I never could do anything with it but just let it have its own way, and live the longer. They are having a nice time down in the parlor worshiping Miss Ford, the light and sunshine of the house, who leaves to morrow for Natchez, and I am going down to help them. So good night. To the same, April 24. Since I wrote you last we have all had a good deal to put our patience and philosophy and faith to the test, and I must own that I have been for some weeks about as uncomfortable as mortal damsel could be. Everything went wrong with Mr. Persico, and his gloom extended to all of us. I never spent such melancholy weeks in my life, and became so homesick that I could hardly drag myself into school. In the midst of it, however, I made fun for the rest, as I believe I should do in a dungeon, and now it is all over, I look back and laugh still. We had a black wedding, a very black one, in my schoolroom the other night, our cook having decided to take to herself a lord and master. It was the funniest affair I ever saw. Such comical dresses, such heaps of cake, wine, coffee, and candy, such kissings and huggings. The man who performed the ceremony prayed that they might obey each other, wherein I think he showed his originality and good sense too. Then he held a book upside down and pretended to read, dear knows what, but the professor, that is to say, Mrs. P., laughed so loud when he said, "Will you take this woe man to be your wedded husband?" that we all joined in full chorus, whereupon the poor priest, who was only the sexton of St. James, was so confused that he married them over twice. I never saw a couple in their station in life provided with a tenth part of the luxuries to which they abounded. We worked all day Saturday in the kitchen, making and icing cake for them, and a nice frolic we had of it, too. Do you love babies? We have a black one in the lot whom I pet for want of something on which to expend my love. When I find anything that will interest the whole family, I read it aloud for general edification. The girls persuaded me into writing a story to read to them, and locked me in my room till it was done. It was the first love story I ever wrote, for hitherto I have not known enough about such things to be able to do it. This reminds me that you asked if I intend forgetting you after I am married. I have no sort of idea what I shall do, provided I ever marry, but if I ever fall in love, I dare say I shall do it so madly and absorbingly as to become, in a measure and for a season, forgetful of everything and everybody else. Still, though I hate professions, I don't see how I can ever cease to love you, whatever else I forget or neglect. There is a restlessness in my affection for you that I don't understand. I half wish to avoid enjoyment now, that I might in some future time share it with you. And yet I have a presentiment that we may have sympathy in trials of which I now know nothing. I am ashamed of myself of late that these subjects of love and matrimony find a place in my thoughts which I never have been in the habit of giving them. But people here talk of little else, and I am borne on with the current. I think that to give happiness in married life, a woman should possess oceans of self-sacrificing love, and I, for one, haven't half of that self-forgetting spirit which I think essential. Yet I am glad you like the Christian Year, and I see that you are quite an Episcopalian. Well, if you are like the good old English divines, nobody can find fault with your choice. Mr. Persico was brought up a Catholic, but professes to be a Nothingarian now. For myself, this only I know, that I earnestly wish all the tendencies of my heart to be heavenward, and I believe that the sincere inquirer after truth will be guided by the Infinite Mind, and so on that faith I venture myself, and feel safe as a child may feel who holds his father's hand. Life seems full of mysteries to me of late, and I am tempted to strange thoughtfulness in the midst of its gayest scenes. How true was the presentiment described in this letter will appear in her correspondence with the same friend more than a quarter of a century later. To Anna S. Prentiss, Richmond, June 1, 1843. I believe you and I were intended to know each other better. I have found a certain something in you which I have been wanting all my life. While I wish you to know me just as I am, faults and all, I can't bear to think of ever seeing anything but the good and the beautiful in your character, dear Anna, and I believe my heart would break outright should I find you to be otherwise than just that which I imagine you are. I don't know why I am saying this, but I have learned more of the world during the last year than in any previous half dozen of my life, and the result is dissatisfaction and alarm at the things I see about me. I wish I could always live, as I have hitherto done, under the shelter of my mother's wing. I ought to ask your pardon for writing in this horrid style, but I was born to do things by steam, I believe, and can't do them moderately. As I write to, so I love you, dear Anna, with all my interests and energies tending to that one point. I was amused the other day when a young lady who came and sat on my bed when I was sick, for I am just getting well from quite a serious illness, and after some half dozen sighs wished she were Anna Prentiss, that she might be loved as intensely as she desired. This is a very roundabout way of saying how very dear you are to me. What chatterboxes girls are! I wonder how many times I've stopped to say, my dear, don't talk so much, for I am writing in school. June 27. Mr. So and so brought the Home to me, and I have laughed and cried over it to my heart's content. Out of pure self love, because they said she was like me, I liked poor Petra with the big nose best of the bunch, though to be sure they liken me to somebody or other in every book we read, till I begin to think myself quite a bundle of contradictions. I have 1,001 things to say to you, but I wonder if as soon as I see you I shall straightway turn into a poker, and play the stiffy, as I always do when I have been separated from my friends. I am writing in a little bit of a den, which by a new arrangement I have all to myself. What if there's no table here, and I have to write upon the bureau, sitting on one foot in a chair, and stretching upwards to reach my paper like a monkey? What do I care? I am writing to you, and your spirit invoked when I took possession of the premises comes here sometimes just between daylight and dark, and talks to me till I am ready to put forth my hand to find yours. Oh, Anna, you must be everything that is pure and good, through to the very depths of your heart, that mine may not ache in finding it has loved only an imaginary being. Not that I should expect you to be perfect, for I shouldn't love you if you were immaculate, but pure in aim and intention and desire, which I believe you to be. 29th. Do you want to know what mischief I've been at? There lay poor Miss So and so, alias Weeky, as we call her, taking her siesta in the most innocent manner imaginable, with a babe in the wood kind of air, which proved so highly attractive that I could do no less than pick her up in my arms and pop her, I don't know but it was head first, right into the bathing tub, which happened to be filled with fresh, cold water. Poor good little Weeky! There she sits, shaking and shivering and laughing with such perfect sweet humor that I am positively taking a vow never to do so again. Well, I had something quite sentimental to say to you when I began writing, but as the spirit moved me to the above perpetration of nonsense, I have nothing left in me but fun, and for that you've no relish, have you? I made out to cry yesterday, and thereby have so refreshed my soul as to be in the best possible humor just now. The why and wherefore of my tears, which, by the way, I don't shed once in an age, was briefly the withdrawal from school one of my scholars, one who had so attached herself to me as to have become almost a part of myself, and whom I had taught to love you, dear Anna, that I might have the exquisite satisfaction of talking about you every day, a sort of sweet interlude between grammar and arithmetic, which made the dull hours of school grow harmonious. She had a presentiment that her life was to close with our school session, from which I couldn't move her even when her health was good, and she says that she prays every day, not that her life may be lengthened, but that she may die before I am gone. I am superstitious enough to feel that the prayer may have its answer, now that I see her drooping and fading away without perceptible disease. The only time I ever witnessed the rite of confirmation was when the hands of the good Bishop rested upon her head, and no wonder if I have half taken up arms in defence of this laying on hands out of the abundance of my heart, if not from the wisdom of my head. Well, I've lost my mirthful mood, speaking of her, and don't know when it will come again. I have taken it into my head that you will visit Niagara on your way home from the South, and have half a mind to go there myself. Did your brother bring home the poems of R.M. Milnes? I have hoped that he did not, since I want to see you enjoy them for the first time, particularly a certain household brownie story, with which I fell in love when President Woods sent us the volume. Here follow a few entries in her diary. May 1. Holiday. Into the country, all of us, white, black, and gray. Sue Empey devoted herself to me like a lover, and so did Sue Lewis, so I was not at a loss for society. My girls made a bower, wherein I was ensconced, and obliged to tell stories to about 40 listeners till my tongue ached. July 18. Left Richmond. August 2. Left reading for Philadelphia. 5. Williamstown, and saw mother, sister, and baby. 16th. President Hopkins' splendid address before the alumni, and also that of Dr. Robbins. 18th. Left Williamstown and reached Nonatum House at night. Saw Aunt Willis, Julia, Sarah, Ellen, etc. 22. Came home. Oh, so very happy. Dear, good home. 23. Callers all day, the second of whom was Mr. P. There have been 19 people here, and I'm tired. 25. What didn't I hear from Anna P. to day? 31. Rode with Anna P. to Sacarapa to see Reverend Mr. and Mrs. H. B. Smith. Took tea at the P.'s and went with them to the preparatory lecture. I do nothing but go about from place to place. September 1. Just as cold could be all day. Spent evening at Mrs. B.'s talking with Neil Dow. 9. Cold and blowy and disagreeable. Went to see Carrie H. Came home and found Mr. P. here. He stayed to tea, read us some interesting things, told us about Mary and William Howitt. 10. Our church was reopened to day. Mr. Dwight preached in the morning and Mr. Chickering in the afternoon. September 11. She marked with a white stone and kept ever after as one of the chief festal days in her life, but of the reason why there is here no record. The diary for the rest of the year is blank, with the exception of a single leaf which contains these sentences: Celle qui a besoin d'admirer ce qu'elle aime, celle dont le jugement est pénétrant, bien que son imagination exaltée, il n'y a pour elle qu'un objet dans l'univers. A rough translation of that is, that which wants an admirer, that loves her, doesn't have penetrating judgment beyond that which her imagination exalts. For her there is no other object in the universe. Celui qu'on aime est le vengeur de fautes qu'on a commis sur cette terre. La divinité lui prête son pouvoir. A rough translation is, he that is loved is the vengeance of faults that are made on this earth. From God who he receives his strength. End of Chapter 3, Part 2 of the Life and Letters of Elizabeth Prentiss. Recording by Teresa Downey.